do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the January the 17th edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we'd like to thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast, today's lesson, or however you determine it to be. Thank you for tuning in. We would like for you to participate in the program. You can do that either by listening or if you have a question or a comment. We would like for you to call this number, 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button if you have a question or a brief comment, as Mr. Fuller refers to it as a VGQ. And make sure that before you do that, you give a call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction. Then you ask your question, and I would ask, and you've done so far this year good, be brief so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question, understand your question, and then answer it. You can do that. Now, if for new callers that call in, because people do all the time and people listen, if you have a question, make sure that you indicate to the call screener that you are a new caller, and they will inform me, and we have a special program set up just for you, first-time callers only, and you will be heard. You can also contact me via the Gmail. All you have to do is I'll give you my address. It's the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, more than likely, it will not be read on this particular program, but on another program. And when we get time, or as time permits, then it will be read. And I will give you a symbol that I send out to let you know that I have received it. So you don't have to worry about that. And lastly, you can contact the show, or rather, you can go to the chat room and get into the chat. And all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. And then you want to make sure that you click on where it says programs. You click on that, and then you'll come up. You can view the programs and stop at the Produce Justice Show. Click that, and then when you do that, the chat room will be available for you to participate in there. So those are the 3 ways that you can get in contact with today's show being January the 17th, 2023. Okay. Let's see here. I want to make sure that we do this and get this in here. And this is very important. If you have put it like this, let's do this. Now, what we are trying to do here is be better, and we emphasized that last week. So here it is again. If you have any comments or feedback regarding the show, send a message to contact@producejustice.com. Now, your feedback helps us to do better as we are all still learning. Okay? Make sure that you do that. Just send a message to contact@producejustice.com. Your name will not be used or anything like that. It doesn't matter if it's a criticism or if you like something, you don't like something, whatever. Make sure you tell us, because our goal is to get better by doing better and not producing confusion. We do not want that. So please, ma'am, please, sir, anything, or any words of encouragement, please, because we want to do better. Okay, let's get on with today's show, and let's do this. Let's say good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. For those of you who are new to the show, we have a little segment called the Thoughts and Expressions on the Mind of Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, today being Tuesday, January the 17th, 2023, what is on your mind for us today?
Well, a continuation of what I said on the last program last week.
Yes.
And that is, I'll just give a quick synopsis. I made a statement to the effect that the smartest black people on the planet, because we've reached that, some people might say, critical stage where a lot of white people are using the term CRT or critical race theory or wokeness, and they are saying that this is not the way to go for whatever these terms mean, and that many of them are saying lots of white people are trying to help to solve the race problem, and this critical race theory and talking about the stigma that is attached to white people about slavery in this modern day is not the way to go to make things better. And they don't want it taught in schools and any place, and particularly where young, impressionable white minds, young children, white children, they say, it seems to be that's what they're saying, should not be exposed to this type of thing and made to feel guilty. So, counter-racist science is all about getting things done. What needs doing is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And anything that impedes or gets in the way of that happening should be eliminated. Any point of view or any way of going about doing things, everything should be heading in that direction, and as soon as possible here in the year 2023. This race thing, actually, within the context of all of its history, the history of racism, should be taken care of in about 1 year at this particular point. No less than that, or no more than that, rather. The race problem should be solved. So on last week's program, I said that the smartest black people, and a lot of black people claim that they are smart, and that's fine, and they should get smarter. Everybody on the planet should get smarter about solving problems in any way that's the best way to go about solving problems. So why not go to the very best mind that we have, if we can find out who has those minds? There are some black people who can solve problems better than other black people. I'm certainly not in that bunch, I don't think. But we want the smartest of the smart, the super over-the-top smart, who can figure things out like a computer. We want the smartest black people to do most of the talking. And if we can tap into that, I don't think that's a question that has been asked before. So this week, on top of that, I'm saying, and the smartest white people, for sure, because they can get it done faster, even than the smartest black people. So since a lot of white people are doing pushback now, like Miss Nina Simone said in her songs, they call it white backlash, they're beginning to say, wait a minute, I mean, black people are going crazy with this race thing. And they're just pushing us to the edge, just pushing us. and not even giving us time to put things in place or anything. They're just too radical. They're going to extremes. And we don't mind black people voicing their opinions or actually doing actual things to eliminate racism, but they can't push too fast in any direction and just try to make us feel guilty all the time when we're making an effort to correct all these ills called racism and associated with it. And that seems to be what a great substantial number of white people are saying worldwide. So therefore, it seems logical, according to the code, counter-racist code, counter-racist science. Oh, well, if that's not going to work very well and produce constructive results, let the smartest white people, let the smartest white people call in on programs like this. I don't think any white people call in on this program at all, but they can just say what the solutions are and that they are working on it and give us a timetable. And that will do more than anything toward satisfying their requirements, I think, at this particular point. I haven't thought about the best, but rather than do a lot of rambling and having black people going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and not getting anything done, like some people say that the legislators in the Northwestern Hemisphere are doing now, and when it comes to making laws, that they're just going back and forth and nothing gets done because they're just doing too much back and forth about, I'm holding my ground and it looks like you're going to hold yours, so nothing is going to change because it's not a matter of holding ground unless that ground has to do with the production of justice. We want to get things moving. A lot of people are complaining about everything, that everything just comes to a standstill, and the standstill is hurting everybody because everybody's complaining. So you want the smartest minds on the biggest problem on the planet, and we need to do that instantly. So that's why I'm putting that word out. That's what's on my mind this morning. The smartest black people, and for sure the smartest white people who can go 10 times or maybe 1,000 times faster than black people could ever go at this point in doing what? Solving the race problem. That's what. That's the objective. Actually solving the race problem, not going back and forth talking about it. Not talking about having another parade or another protest or coming up with another slogan or somebody some professor in a university come up with a new way of talking about it. Get it done. Get it done. And so now in science, you're getting a lot of things done. I hear that they got artificial intelligence now that is off the hook, where you can push a button and solve any problem that anybody ever thought up. Well, now, the best minds should be working on solving the race problem, which is the biggest problem in recorded history among the people of this planet. And that's what I'm thinking about. And black people should be making that request. I'll just add that, in every conversation with white people, well, let the smartest people talk. The smartest on the planet, who have ever existed on the planet, let them say, I'm going to solve the race problem. It's 9 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to solve the race problem by 4 o'clock this evening. Because we're the super brains, and we know how to push the buttons to move people's minds around even. We know how. We got artificial intelligence. We know how to do everything so far when it comes to problem solving, if it's possible for a problem to be solved. And then the rest of us, who are just stumbling and fumbling and and trying to figure out, well, we got to go forward, coming up with more and more slogans. We got to move forward and not backward, and stomping your foot while you're saying it, as if that's going to change anything. And get it done. That's where we are now. Just get it done. No more pretty speeches. Been there, done that. And that all helped. But now, just 3 words. Get it done. All of it. Be through with it forever. That's my comment.
Okay. From the chat room, Justice Warrior said this, Mr. Fuller, how do you define smart? Because what I find is that we have a lot of formally educated people who are about as dumb as can be, and that includes many whites and white supremacists as well. Mr. Fuller, you are one of the best minds we have. I take your logic any day over a few people, Michael Eric Dyson, Mark Lamont Hill, Cornel West, or any of the rest of them, because, Mr. Fuller, you have the ability to simplify the difficult. So the question was, Mr. Fuller, how do you define smart people?
People who get things done. Well, I give them a problem and they got it, and they say, come back. What? I got an hour? Come back in an hour. I got this problem solved.
Okay.
I'm not going to describe the problem and be eloquent about it and whatnot and all emotional and whatnot and have everybody clapping and stamping their feet that agree with it, and then other people who disagree, stomping their foot and balling up their fists and shouting back at the people who they disagree with. Been there, done that. We're doing all of that. I can do that. I'm doing it. I'm among that dumb crowd.
Okay.
Why? What's the criteria? Has Fuller solved the problem? Well, Fuller's one of the best speakers on it and all like that. Hey, stop that right now. When Fuller solves the problem, wake me up. I'll be woke. That's what everybody should be saying.
Okay.
I don't want to hear no more theatrics from anybody, black or white.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people should be saying about this race problem right now. No more theatrics. Theater won't get it. If you want to have a play and whatnot, have it after the problems are solved. Then
yes,
you
sir.
can play all you want to.
Yes,
but
sir.
Did you get it done?
All right.
A lot of people say that's like, being kind of unreasonable, and that's not the General Patton way. Well, there might be something said for General Patton. Because I looked at part of General Patton of that movie last night. It was on TV. And I also have it on my list. Now, I'm not saying that he's some kind of hero to me. I knew I have a pretty good idea where General Patton stood on the race issue. I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a person who, he said, I don't want to hear anything about what effort you are making or how much time you have put in or what a great writer you are or a great speaker you are. You see that hill over there? I want to take him. And we're going to lose a lot of people doing it. But you got an hour to do it. That's why how he would talk to soldiers who were fixing to die. And he would talk to his, so I understand the true story of it, he would talk to his colonels and all of the people. He said, hey, I don't want to hear anything except it's done. did you get it done? Well, we ran into, I don't care what you ran into. You're a soldier, get it done. Otherwise, take off the uniform. Find something else to do. And so that's where we are now on the race issue, in my opinion.
In your opinion, okay. From the Gmail, Nawab said this. First of all, let me say that the onus being on us to solve a problem that we never created in part is ridiculous. We as melanated/black people did not create the system of white supremacy or racism. Therefore, again, why does the responsibility fall on our shoulders to do so? This is what Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday many commemorated this past weekend, sought to do during the course of his life, and we see what an uphill battle it was. But I'd say that people such as King, yourself, Mr. Fuller, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Amos Wilson, and Dr. Claude Alexander have been among a handful of individuals who, over the years, proposed ways and solutions on how black people can become an empowered group, how we can avoid the pitfalls of racism, etc. Unfortunately, the masses of black people, both here and across the world, have never accessed their works due to gatekeepers, both white supremacists and Negro. Definitely not the code book, because I'll say this, your book, Mr. Fuller, is one solution to solving the race problem in America and beyond. But it's only been within the past few years that more and more people have become aware of a book you've been updating and perfecting for nearly 70 years in one form or another. So I'd say, Mr. Fuller, if the people in this chat and the people listening in general will put forth more effort in getting your book greater access to the masses of black people, or at least get them to tune into this broadcast, that will be a huge step. I know you're not into self-promotion or any sort, but, damn it, you put in the work. Now it's up to the people to put the concepts you've put forth in your book, which you can get by going to producejustice.com, to work to see if it can truly solve the race problem. And then, if and when we see positive results, you can stop saying you've been a failure because you have not done what you were put here on earth to do, which is to solve the race problem. That came from a Nawab. Your thoughts, people, coming up here, right here. Let's do this, starting off. Corey, Milwaukee. Let me get this over here. And, Corey, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning,
sir. Just thinking about the question that you put forward, Mr. Fuller, and your definition of smart, it seems to me that there are no smart black people if getting constructive things accomplished and done is the criteria for being smart. Therefore, my question is, what can we do as non-white people to force the hand of the so-called smart white people to eliminate this system of white supremacy? Because I feel like it's only going to come from enough white people wanting to end it.
Well, I mean, that's where we are right now, and we're actually doing it. A lot of black people are out here and who are aware and of the problem. Certainly the people who are on what they call the cutting edge of what they call critical race theory, and a lot of black people or seeing how that's upsetting, well, a substantial number of black people, it seems to me, from what I see on television, listen to on the radio, some black people are beginning to get uneasy about pushing white people too far. I mean, that they'll just say, we're not going to try to help you do nothing because you're all being unreasonable. And that's what a lot of white people are actually saying. That's what, I guess, directly and indirectly, the January 6th group, as they call it, was all about. And that was quite a few people, and just probably just the tip of the iceberg, you might say, that demonstration. Because it might be a lot of white people in that category who are saying, now, we've heard Martin Luther King, we've given you a statue, we've given you this and given you that. You got black people, you had a black president who did 2 terms, a lot of us supported it, and all like that. Now, some of you black people just need to stop killing each other and robbing and stealing and this butt dancing and this pushing as much foolishness as you possibly can. And we white people, I mean, we're just getting weary of it because you're not doing anything constructive but complaining. You're not trying to better yourselves, even when we try to help you. You'd rather rob and steal and run around shooting through windows and whatnot. That's what they're saying, see what I mean? So then we push back saying, well, white people are shooting up whole towns, I mean, with rifles and whatnot. What about Las Vegas? Has anybody forgotten that? Going into schools and going into churches and shooting black people. So here we go, back and forth, back and forth. And so I listened to a lot of Martin Luther King's speeches yesterday, several of them, and excellent. All that work has been done. And you can repeat it, and it applies right today, just like it did way before 1968 when he was assassinated. His words, I mean, and you can practically duplicate his words by listening to, or reading about, rather, things, quotes, writings from Frederick Douglass, and that was quite a hike ago, quite some time. So in answer to the caller's questions, what we can do is just say what I said at the beginning of this program at this particular point, because I think I'm aware of what's going on, and just say, okay, the smartest white people, Neely Fuller with his little jive operation trying to say that he's trying to solve the race problem, he's nowhere near as smart as the smartest white people, who everybody begs for everything that they need if they got color in their skin. So let these white people, the white people who provide everything for all of the non-white people of the planet, all kinds of, what you want an education? Go to these white people. It's always white people. If you want an economic system that somewhat works to the extent that everybody's money crazy and they run it from top to bottom, why not they be the people who solve the race problem? And they can take credit for it, and we'll help them have credit for it. I mean, after all, the white supremacists made the mess. They're the most skilled at cleaning up the mess. That's pure logic there. So let the smartest white people, don't complain about the victims and their opinions and whatnot. We're entitled to these opinions about our victimization. But we are, have exhaustive opinions. We all do that. So all of these smart white people, rather than just sit back and they complain about us, step forward and solve the problem. And when we look around and see that the problem is solved, we'll applaud, since glory is what you want. But see, what I think is that too many white people say, yeah, we'll have glory for a moment out of that. but we don't have a second act. If we do away with racism today, what are we going to do for entertainment tomorrow? See, I think that is what's happening. And I think that's where the anger from white people is coming from. If we don't have racism, we don't have one of our main values. Now, this is where it gets hairy, in my opinion. I mean, this is where it comes really down, you know. Well, in other words, are you telling us, that's the question, that you think that racism is better than justice? And at some point, I'm sure that what you call the diehard racist will say, yeah, we get more fun, more glory, and more material comfort out of racism than we will ever get out of something called justice or anything close to it. And,
okay.
And that will really be the moment of truth, when the majority of white people say that outright, because it seems like we're headed in that direction. Now, if that's where it's headed, that should be clear as a bell. If that's what the majority of white people of this planet that we all share are saying, racism is better than justice, and we're not turning loose to it under any circumstance. That's the moment of truth for us.
The moment of truth. All right. Thank you, Corey. We got to break it off here. Thank you, Corey, for your comment. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. If you'd like for you to get in touch with the show, just call this number, 516-453-9921. Make sure if you have a question or a brief comment, just press the number 1 button, and you will get in line. Make sure you give the call screener your name. If you are a first-time caller, please make sure that you give the call screener your name. Indicate that you are a first-time caller, and then they will alert me, and then you can be heard as you are in a rotation, but you kind of can go up to the front of the line, so to speak. Okay, let's see here. Oh, yes, listen, questions or comments, we want you, because we want to improve. We really do want to get better. That's been our emphasis in this early part of 2023. We need to get better, and in order to get better, we need your feedback. We really need your feedback. So all you have to do is send a message, positive, negative, whatever. Just send it at contact@producejustice.com. You know, your name will not be used. We will take the comments, and they will analyze that and see how we can be better. As you notice at the end of almost every program, Mr. Fuller and myself say that we need to get better, and that's not joking around. We really do need to get better, because we make mistakes all the time, and we don't want to do that because we want to eliminate confusion. So your questions or suggestions, I should say, or even questions, you know, are very important to us so that we can be better. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, yeah. Listen, you can also Gmail me if you have a question. Now, it won't be read today, more than likely, but you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will get it. I will give you a symbol that I have it, and then we will go ahead on. Now, please, ma'am, please, sir, do not write me a novel. Please, I can't really do it justice. Just a comment or something so that I can ask Mr. Fuller that, okay? And you can also do this. Go into the chat room, and Mr. Fuller has set the chat room on fire with about the smartest people. There's been several good conversations in there, and if you'd like to see those conversations, or maybe you have something to say, just go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on where it says programs, and you click on that, and the Produce Justice show will come up. You click that, and then the chat room becomes available, and you can read all of the chats all the conversations that go on in there, and you can add your 2 cents. And lastly, very important, especially for those who are new to the program, Mr. Fuller has written a book, and it is called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And if you would like to get this book, it's a code book, a guide, whatever you want to call that in that, just go to producejustice.com. And all the information on the book will come up, past shows, comments, or Mr. Fuller has gone on, in particular, the Carl Nelson show, that is up. How many of you got to look at that? I did a couple times. All the latest information, you can get that. It's right there. That's at producejustice.com. And by the way, Mr. Fuller, before we go on, you had mentioned one of the books that you recommended, Race Code War by Mr. Kahari Inaharo. Well, I checked it out, and I went to order the book, and the place that I ordered them from did not have any copies, so I did call Mr. Inaharo, and he's out of the books too. Race Code War, I think you mentioned. He doesn't have any right now. He said he would get back in contact with me, something to that effect, so I can get that book. But that's one of the books I want to read, in addition to your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. All righty. That being said, George, Toronto, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Oh, hi, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, George.
Yes, sir. I was again thinking about what Mr. Fuller says about why the smartest black people haven't solved the problem, and it comes to quite a few things. First, the six major confusion methods that the white supremacists use. One, which is racial classification confusion, racial sexual confusion. So what's going on is that we're being sent around in circles. So being confused is usually the white supremacists use confusion as a means to wage war. So you have black people on one end that don't see that replacing racism with justice is the ultimate, is the main thing that all people of color need to focus on, because there isn't really anything else.
Okay. Excuse me, George, but did you have a question for Mr. Fuller? Because we only have a limited amount of time. Did you have a question for him, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Sorry,
okay.
sir.
All
I was rambling. Okay, I guess, Mr. Fuller, I think black people need to see. Don't you think that black people need to see that racism is the ultimate problem?
Okay, we'll let Mr. Fuller answer that. Mr. Fuller?
Yes. That's what this whole program is about. It has been. That's the position I've taken. Now, it may not be true. There might be a problem on the planet bigger than that. But I'm saying, like I said in the back of the book, no major problem can be solved among the people of this planet until the problem of racism is solved. That's the position I took. That could be an error. But I say I used to have a slang expression. If you solve the race problem, all the other problems on the planet you can take care of on your day off or on your lunch hour. I used to say it in different ways, just to kind of give people a frame of reference.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I said it almost in a jestful form, but it's completely serious. You know, you can solve every problem that's going on between people of this planet, but if you don't solve the race problem, all those other problems are going to stay right where they are. But if you solve the race problem, it makes the solving of all other problems much easier for everybody. everything kind of falls in place. This thing called the system of white supremacy. If you replace it with justice, everything, how can you get better than that? I mean, the other little things will just be pulled right into that orbit.
Yes, sir.
And disappear. All the other problems, that's the logical concept.
Yes, sir.
It may be an error, but in answer to the question, yes. Just make that the priority. Using your smartest minds, not the second place people, third place, and I'm way down on the list, even though people say that I'm not. But I know that the concept, the codified concept of solving the problem is the way anybody's going to have to go to solve the problem, including white people. They're going to. It calls for a code. Code just means do what works. That's all it really means in simple language. Do what works. If it doesn't work, don't fool with it.
Good point. Thank you, George, from Toronto. Let's go to Charles in Santa Cruz. Charles, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Thank you for holding.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning.
I had a quick question, and my thought was, I noticed there aren't any other so-called races of people who put themselves down in movies, commercial, music than we do. Should we adopt a code not to do that to ourselves? And is that hurting us?
That's what the entire code. Finish your question. Is that the finish?
I was finished, yes, sir.
No, we shouldn't adopt something that doesn't work. I just finished saying that. Codification, that's what the word code means. When you do it, it works. We don't have anything close to that. Everything is about do's and don'ts. Everything in the universe is about do's and don'ts. And you separate the don'ts from the do's. You do it because it works. That's what you call logic. You don't do anything that doesn't work. And what do you mean by work? Producing constructive results. That's what it means. It'll jump right out at you. You start the engine on that car and the engine starts. You do the same thing over and over again. And it works every time. Stop doing things that don't work. Like black people going around robbing the corner delicatessen. Now, how often can you do that? For how long? You're going to be 80 years old, hobbling in there on a cane and say, stick 'em up. Now, you're 16 now. You're starting out thinking you can do that at 80. You better have a better plan for your age group, 16, because you just might not make it to 17. In many cases, you won't. Many black mothers now, all over the world, or black females who are trying to be mothers, actually the mothers of all black people are white, illegitimate white mothers in the system of white supremacy. And they have put all of us in a condition in which black people are going to continue. We can say stop the killing, we can march, we can do all that. That's going to continue. That's going to continue as long as the conditions are what they are. Because a 16-year-old black person says, my father's locked up. My grandmother, she comes and gets me out of jail. I've been going to jail since I was, 14, some kind of jail. I'm 17 now. And they tell me that I'm on some kind of program, and they're telling me now that I'm heading toward going where my father was, or my stepfather, who's locked up. I don't have anything. All in this neighborhood where I am, the whole place looks like a prison. There's people just milling around, and there ain't a store nowhere except that little liquor store, and the building next to it is all boarded up. That's all that's around here. That liquor store and that boarded up building, and a whole lot of vacant lots with a whole lot of raggedy flowers on it from the last killing, which was last week. And I see some girls down there with some balloons and whatnot, and they say somebody else just got killed trying to rob that liquor store. That's what black people are looking at. And so we're going to get what we put out. And who wants black people around them? Not even other black people. On account of they're saying, I got to get out of here. I can't lose another son. I just lost 3. I got 1 more left. These are black ladies who are working hard. And for nothing. They're getting nothing for all that effort. They're trying to do their best, but their best ain't going to ever be good enough under this system. So we need a code of behavior. And that code says one thing. See, it's about the doing part. The doing part is if you're having conflict by contacting each other, don't contact each other. We need to learn that. Black people need to avoid even talking to each other, passing each other on the street. We used to be able to do that. Now somebody thinks it's a cue to pull a pistol. What you speaking to me for? I don't know you. N-word, N-word, N-word. I'll kill you. You don't know me. Leave me alone. I got things on my mind. Come up, some good morning. You don't know me. What's good about it? Ain't nothing good about you messing with me. See, that's black people. But the white supremacists designed our minds to be that way. It's all on them. We didn't come here. We weren't born that way. So how did we get that way? That's the kind of world they have made. The white supremacists are guilty of all of it. And we say that. But we just don't stop there. We say that we need to come up with a system that's better. Codification is the way to go. You got to have a code. The white supremacists have a code. That's why they're successful. And what is a code? Do's and don'ts. If you're going to have conflict with each other every time you pass each other on the street, don't pass each other on the street. That'll settle that.
Okay.
No contact, no conflict. That's in the textbook. Now, I want to say something else about the textbook for victims of white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
Because many a professor will look at it, and many a professor has. It's sloppily written. It's one of the worst written books ever produced on counter-racist science. But it's the best I can do out of my feeble mind. And it's a lot of errors. But the concept is sound. I would like for people to build on the concept. Code. Have a code. Produce something that says what to do about things on an everyday basis. I try to codify everything. Like when I heard the woman, I don't know whether maybe I should save that for later. Let people call in.
Okay. All right, thank you, Charles from Santa Cruz. Thank you for your call. Let's go to Taylor in L.A. Taylor, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My question is, Mr. Fuller, how should we respond to white people when they ask us personal questions? How should non-white people respond to white people when they ask us personal questions?
you say that question, the question that you ask, if it involves people other than yourself, either directly or indirectly, the code says, what you say is, well, it would be discourteous to other people who would be involved in whatever this question is about. Because most likely the question that they ask you is not just about you, it's about other people that you have contact with. Most likely. Either directly or indirectly. Family questions and all like that. So you say, I can't talk about that without getting into the area of gossip. And the code of logic, this is the way you talk when you say it. So the code of logic says that would not produce a constructive result. So I won't answer that question because it would involve other people without their permission of me mentioning them. See, gossip, according to the code, means you say things about people and people don't know that you're saying it. That's what the code says. That's why we need a code. You have your definitions, too. Gossip is something that no black person should ever do, and that is say anything about anybody without that person knowing that that's being said. So that will cut that off right from the beginning. That's what white people are, black people. Black people get nosy just to be nosy and destructive as a result when you tell them things. So when they get to that line, you just say, that involves other people. And if I say anything in answer to your question, and be polite when you do it, you just inform them, this is a part of the code of logic. You can even use the word code. You say, this is according to the courtesy code. You can call it anything you want to. Say, according to the code of courtesy and the code of gossip, I can't gossip because I don't gossip. And if I answer the question that you asked me about, I would be getting pretty close to dipping into gossip, and I absolutely cannot do that. I can never in my life gossip about anybody. And what is gossip? Saying things about people that involve other people other than myself, that the people don't know that I'm saying that about them. I have to inform them or ask them for permission to mention their name if I'm going to discuss them.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, that's the answer to the question, I guess.
Oh. Okay.
If the lady is satisfied with that answer.
Were you satisfied with that answer, Taylor, or did you have another question?
No, that was perfect. Thank you both for your time.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Let's say you can't gossip. Just remember that. That's in the code book.
Yes,
don't gossip.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Listen, for those of you who are hanging on the call, I'm going to get you on the second side of the hour, so don't worry about that. I'm noticing some hands are up. Listen, those of you who want to ask Mr. Fuller a question, please, if you will, ma'am or sir, give the call screener your name so that I know what's coming up here. That way, it just makes it easier. Mr. Fuller, we have about 5 minutes in this section, so to close it out. So what I'm going to do is have you talk about your book.
Yes. Like I just mentioned, gossip is mentioned in the book as one of the 10 stops. There are 10 stops. I forgot the page numbers for it. 10 things that black people should absolutely stop doing. Gossip is one of them. And a lot of other things in the code book is about do's and don'ts for the individual person. You don't have to be a member of an organization or join anything. Join with yourself with a thing called logic. Logic is in the universe. And the concept is, the codified concept, is that you don't follow people. Neely, Fuller, or anybody else. because you follow logic. The white supremacists use logic to put the system of white supremacy together. They're the most logical people on the planet. They are not fascinated by personalities. And they have made themselves, as individual persons, leaders. Now, white people would say that they have leaders and all like that, but basically the white supremacists lead themselves and get everybody else to follow their lead, a person of color, who is a person of color. Mm-hmm. And they do this by brute force or by deception, mostly deception, which is the smoothest way to do it. And what the textbook is about, black people need a counter code. The white supremacists have a racist code. We need a counter-racist code, which means just a way of going about doing things. Like I just gave the illustration. You don't gossip. When white people ask you to gossip, you say, I don't do that, and give them the reason, because it harms other people. It brings harm. It's not the best way to interact with people. It doesn't make for a quality relationship. And to discuss other people's business, which you're always involved in other people's business, but the people may not want anybody other than you involved in that type of business. So the code book is all about how to do these things, how to talk to people on the job. What do you do if somebody, you walk into your office, if you work in one, and the word, the N-word is on the wall behind your desk? What do? The code says, and this is what I do, and I follow the code on that one easily. I just walk in and take my seat at the desk. Whoever put it up there can take it down. I mean, they can leave it. Neely Fuller will never take it down or say anything about it. Being up there, other than if somebody asks me, that's right behind your desk in big bold letters, the whole wall. Got just that one word. Somebody put it up there last night. I say, yeah, I see it. That would be Neely Fuller's response, according to what? The code. Let them. They can put it all up under the elevated tracks and whatnot. They can paint the town with it and put my name on it. In fact, the N-word starts with N. My first name is Neely. So they can say N-word Neely or Neely N-word and paint the town with it. I say, so somebody got a whole lot of time. That's all I can say about that. That's all I'm going to say. So what?
Okay.
So
well, anyway, we got to close it out. So where can we get the book at?
Right.
And the book can be got at what now? So people
going
can
to producejustice.com. Do's and don'ts. That's what the book consists of.
Oh, okay.
For the individual victim of white supremacy. The individual. Yes. You don't have to join any organization or pay any dues or anything like that. You pay the dues for the book. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, though, but the book is sloppily written by my own evaluation of reading books, and I read a lot of them. But any professor or anybody that looks at that book say, this book is sloppily written. I mean, he shouldn't even have attempted to have written this book. But it's out there, and I'm still trying to push it because that's the best I can do.
Yes, sir. Okay, producejustice.com. Thank you, everybody that called in or everybody that's still holding for your comments and your questions for today's program for the first hour. We thank you. If you have to go, hopefully you'll come back next week, but we just want to, again, thank you. Remember, if you have any comments about the show or how we can improve, just go to contact@producejustice.com and submit it, and then they'll forward that information to us so that we can do better. So, if you got to go, you got to go. But for those who are going to stick and stay, not go away, We have a second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller coming up in 5 seconds. All righty. Thank you, and welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we thank you for listening. We would like for you to be a participant in today's show, and all you have to do is call this number, 516-453-9921. Make sure that you give the call screener your name so that I can properly do that, as I'm going to do Nicole. Now, there's two other people under Nicole who have not given their names, so I don't know who you are. Please, ma'am, please, sir, give your name to the call screener so I can properly give you an introduction to the show. Now, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. When I get it, I will give you my symbol to let you know that I have received your Gmail. Now, it may not be read on today's program, but when it is read, I will also let you know so that you can hear your question. And lastly, you can join the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. Once you get on that bad boy, just click, you want programs, so click on programs, and the Produce Justice Show will come up. Click on that, and I believe it's to the right. The chat room becomes available to you, and they are hot and heavy in there. Wow, look how many people are in that chat room, and they are just going. Yes, go to blogtalkradio.com, and, and make sure you click on the programs and then the Produce Justice Show, and you can get into the chat room and do your thing. Occasionally, I will select something out of the chat room, but don't use the chat room to ask me to ask Mr. Fuller a question. That is what the 800, or rather than the 800, that is what the phone number is for. Okay? I believe that is it. Okay. Let's go back to the phone lines. Okay, here we go. Back to the phone lines, and here we go with Nicole. Nicole, thanks for waiting. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm glad you covered this topic today because I was looking at Cypress Hill, and they were talking about when they was back in the 80s, late 80s, asking for non-censorship about marijuana, which now is a big business. But I'm glad that you was talking about this today because I was looking at also Kevin Durant, and I didn't know he came out of D.C., and he was just saying that when they was coming up, how many rec centers, which I know that you know that, so that was curbing a lot of our, we always had killings in our neighborhoods, but not in volumes like it is now. So I'm glad that you're covering this subject today because I talked to my son today who was in a federal penitentiary, not to no act of his own or me being a single mama, not teaching him the right way, but being part of a little situation. However, I really didn't have much to say today other than kudos and thank you for always keeping up with the times and my past of my life and things that's keeping me grounded and keeping me fighting the right way, as older people taught me, as being a person that was affiliated to gang violence, but we wasn't, in my era, it wasn't gang violence. It was, again, protecting our moms, single moms that was working in our neighborhoods against corruption and prostitution and drugs. So I just hope that me in your lifetime is able to see a change in the way we're doing business. Just like I was looking at the Washington Journal, and I end here, Mr. Bobby, I know your time is precious, that they were talking about the debt and the ceiling and stuff like that. I mean, you can't even go into a bank and get bonds, barely sell them anymore. So I didn't understand what they were saying about that, about our debt in America. And I'm like, if we have so much debt, then we outsource jobs, and which making these kids not have a skill base and hang out at little strip malls or little stores to cause chaos. And you're so right. Even me coming from where I come from, moving to the East Coast and speaking to people, it's so offensive when you speak to people. So now I just kind of, when I walk past people, I mean, I'm just who I am. I'm going to speak, And if you say what you say, that's what you say. I kind of end there because this is a very, I don't want to say emotional topic, but it's a kind of topic that's near and dear to my heart that 20 years ago, the Black United Front and some other people in my hometown took the initiative to educate me on how to fight a fight better than with violence and fighting with petition. I think that we as a people in my era, as the next generation, not the X generation, it's really about filing petitions. And I was even looking at Martin Luther King yesterday. It was his birthday, of course. And so it was even something that he was doing when he was fighting against the trash people in Tennessee, and how young people took advantage of that moment, even in the 60s, to break glass and to loot. So to me, it seems like sometimes when we have a good cause, that somebody somewhere, white supremacists or politicians, will pay somebody to go and make that demonstration into a looting opportunity. And with that, I yield.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, this topic has been pretty heavy, Mr. Fuller. Why haven't the smartest black people solved the race problem? Very good. Thank you, Nicole. Remember now, when you call in with a question, I really need your name so that we know who we are speaking with. Going to the text or Gmails, Mr. Fuller, let's see. This comes from Mr. Malachi. Says this, Mr. Fuller, are you familiar with the term narcissist or NPD, narcissist personality disorder? If so, do you think this is what the white supremacists have done to black people by traumatizing us so much that this is the cause of our lack of empathy towards each other, our willingness to take accountability, which blame shifting for our actions, and the disdain and contempt we have for each other, why we gaslight, smear each other's names, and why we devalue ourselves and everyone else. And our
yes.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that the end of the question?
No, he had another question added onto that, but yeah, go ahead and answer that first part of that.
Yes. The white supremacists are to blame for everything that we do. Doesn't make any difference what it is. Why? According to the evidence, not according to Neely Fuller. According to the evidence. Why is this true? Because we haven't had another teacher other than them. I mean, everything that the people that I was taught to glorify when I was in elementary school were people who kill people. I heard about people like Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great. What made him great? Killing people. You wasn't building any great buildings or anything like that, as far as I know, as far as I was taught. It's killing people. In fact, it's reported, I learned this somewhere along the way, that Mr. Alexander the Great got to the desert from one place, traveling from one place to another. And the way it was reported to me, according to one of my teachers, I don't remember which, he got to the edge of the desert, and he saw that the desert was the desert. And he didn't see anybody out there. He saw nothing moving around in that desert. It was a vast desert, and as far as the eye could see. And from the reports he was getting, there's nobody out there.
Mm-hmm.
There are no people out there in this particular desert. And it was reported to me by one of my teachers that Alexander the Great sat down and cried because there were no more worlds to conquer. That's the mentality of the white supremacists. And when you go to school, that's the kind of stuff you learn. And you are supposed to glorify these people and look up to them and build statues all over the place. Robert E. Lee, people like that, swords in their hands or on their sidearms they call them, an extra arm. What is that sword for? To cut off your arms or chop off your head, particularly if you're black and you insult General Robert E. Lee. Off with your head. And this is the kind of stuff that they teach. And want you to say, well, you didn't have a meal today, or your offspring didn't eat today, but I got $1 zillion statue standing up here in the town square, and I want you to worship that statue. What kind of insanity is that?
Yes,
you
sir.
haven't had breakfast, but the money is being spent to take up all this real estate. That's excellent farmland where that statue is, where you could get a meal or two if you were growing cabbage or tomatoes or avocados. That'll go a long way towards solving a problem, whereas that statue of Robert E. Lee is not solving any problem. It's paying tribute to a person who was making a problem for everybody who was black. So this is the kind of world we are introduced to, that the white supremacists want us to continue to nourish.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to get rid of.
Yes, sir. Okay. He goes on to say, and particularly based on what you just commented on, he goes on to say, are the white supremacists, in fact, the narcissists themselves?
Are the white supremacists what?
In fact, the narcissists themselves. They're blaming you for all this stuff, but are they, in fact, the ones who are really the perpetrators of this madness?
They are. Everything that a black person does that shouldn't be done, the white supremacists are to blame. This is cold, and the evidence shows us. It's not because Neely Fuller said it. Don't take anything that Neely Fuller says ever, if the evidence doesn't bear it out, or logic bears it out, or what you've seen. I won't say what you have heard, because you've heard a lot of things. But just take a look yourself. Be wary of anything that anybody says, white or non-white. But I'm saying the white supremacists took black people under their custody before they were born. Every black person on this planet was born here. I'll put it this way. In 2023, there's not a person of color on planet Earth that was not born in the system of white supremacy. If you were born in the system of white supremacy, and you're on this planet in 2023. The system of white supremacy has been in business a long time. So, all of your training that amounts to anything has come from the white supremacists. If you're robbing a grocery store, they taught you to do that. Nobody else. Now, I made a flat statement. Where'd you learn that? Every movie. And robbery, thievery, the concept of capitalism, the concept of socialism, the concept of royalism, the concept of any other kind of ism that has some destructive features, and we learned it because it was taught to us. We go to their schools because there aren't any other schools other than the ones that they set up worldwide. When we say we're going to school, we're going to school, and who's the teacher? Directly and indirectly. Say, well, all my teachers were black. I'm in Nigeria. I'm in Botswana. Well, if they're going to a school, what are they learning in that school and who taught them? Your teachers were black, but what will they tell you? Oxford. Oxford? Where is that? Somewhere where the white people are. As if it's worth learning at all. Which way did the white people go? All over the world, that's what you'll hear black people saying, in all kinds of tribal tongues and whatnot. Oh, I'm going to get an education. I'm sending my children where? Which way did the white people go? That's where you're going to send them. If you're going to get an education, you certainly ain't going to get one here. And black people will tell the truth worldwide, and they're listening to me worldwide. That's true. They'll say, Mr. Fuller, I'm calling you to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. And he's calling from London. Where were you born, Ghana? What does that say? What are you doing in London? I'm going to school. I'm trying to get an education. Oh. See, so the white supremacists, they hoard knowledge. They let it out in little driblets, let you know what they think you ought to know. Mm-hmm. So you can come to London and you can learn Shakespeare, but you won't learn anything about how to make a tractor.
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Don't forget, when you call in, give the call screener your name. Justin, Illinois, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Oh, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
My question is, I was reading the code book a couple of days ago, and I came across a section that said, try not to seem like you're ill at ease around white people. And I find myself having a hard time with this because I know they're part of the enemy soldiers, you know.
So the question is,
why would you suggest try not to seem like you're ill at ease when around white people, when I know for most non-white people, they become ill at ease around white people?
Well, why be ill at ease around white people? Unless you see, being ill at ease comes from what? You are wishing
fear.
that something will happen that most likely is not going to. That's when a person is ill at ease. Ill at ease. That's what. Think about what you just said. You're ill at ease when you're around white people. That's because of your expectations. That's where that comes from. Or your hopes. You're hoping that something constructive for you will happen, rather than, like the code requires, the counter-racist code says, you don't go in that situation thinking that. Always think. You're around enemies. These are racist suspects. Racists do harm to people of color. So you go in knowing that. You don't just think that. You go in saying that in a system of white supremacy and you're around a lot of white people, some of those white people, and it don't take but a few, may be racist. Most likely are. So you go in knowing that. So you shouldn't be ill at ease because you already came to the conclusion. I am surrounded by enemies. People who are wishing me ill will. I'm not among friends. They're not looking for a way to help me. They're looking for a way to harm me if they think about me at all. Those who are thinking that way. Now, there's a few that don't, but I can't tell the difference. So I'm in enemy territory every step that I take on this planet. No such thing as an independent black person on planet Earth. Every black person on planet Earth is dependent totally on what the white supremacists do or not do, directly and indirectly. So you're in a prison wherever you go. Now, always expect when you're in a prison for things that you don't want to happen. That's why it's a prison.
Yes,
and the white supremacists have made the entire planet a prison for every black person on this planet that is called Earth. And that's the status that you have. And your prison uniform is your color. So they recognize you immediately. There's another war prisoner. I'll treat him like one.
All righty. Was that it, Justin? Did that take care of your question?
Yeah.
Don't expect any kindness or anything. If you get any kind word, say that should surprise you. See, this is the situation that black people are in. If somebody who is white says a kind word to you, that's a super bonus here in the year 2023.
All righty. All right. Thank you, Justin, for your call. Let's do this, Mr. Fuller. Let's see, what is this? Oh, yeah. Aaron said this, Mr. Fuller. He said, Mr. Fuller, can you define the word? You define this word. What is the origin of monopoly? Is monopoly a European concept, and how do monopolies and white supremacy, racism work together?
Well, whomever uses the term saying that they have a monopoly or something like that, or this person has it and that person has it, the code says whenever a person uses a term, the person who is using the term should explain what it is.
Okay, well, since he's not here to explain that, I did look it up, and it said that the simple meaning of monopoly is a situation where there is a single seller in the market. In conventional economic analyses, the monopoly case is taken as the polar opposite of a perfect competition. By definition, the demand curve facing the monopolist is the industry demand curve, which is downward sloping. I think I'm going to interpret that means that they have an advantage. So his question, part of that, since let's say that we agree on that definition that was written, the last part of it says, how do monopolies, since it has something to do with domination, how do monopolies and white supremacy racism work together?
Yes, and in answer to the question, you can find that out simply by doing what? According to the code, asking questions. And the question, the logical question would be, what is it? And that would have to come from the person who is using the term, or who accepts the use of the term, or if you have heard the word, and like you asked me, what is a monopoly? I haven't looked up the word. So I would have to ask someone else who does know, and then we can talk. But one thing you want to avoid at all times is using words yourself that you don't know the meaning of it.
Okay. Now,
even if you give it a meaning that nobody's ever gave it, I do that. I did that with the word justice. I didn't like none of the definitions of any of the dictionaries that I looked at for the word justice. So I made up I made up a definition, so I always know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now, I did look that up and gave the definition just a few moments ago, Mr. Fuller, so that you could answer the question. I gave you the example of what the dictionary said monopoly was, and that's why I asked the last part of that question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Which is the procedure. Just find out what somebody else says that the word means. So within that context, the question was, is white supremacy, I think, if I understand it, a monopoly?
Well, okay, basically.
Is the system of white supremacy a monopoly? A monopoly on what? In other words, it means complete control. Well,
right, yes,
complete control. Now I got to ask more questions. Complete control of what? Well, if it means a monopoly on the control of black people, oh, yes. That jumps right out at you. Yes. That's what white supremacy means. Complete control. That a black person can't make a decision about nothing without a white person's approval. That's supreme. That's monopoly. I got a corner on the black market. We can put it in that context.
Yes.
And using the term black market in a way that people don't usually think of it. But it means complete control, maybe, if you put it in that context. No word means anything except what you make it mean. Now, that's part of the code.
That's part of the code. Okay, let me break it here. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we would love for you to be a participant in the show, and all you have to do is call this number, 516-453-9921. Be sure to press the number 1 button, and when you do that, you'll get in line so that your question can be answered. And Mr. Fuller will do that. So please, ma'am, please, sir, be brief when you do that so that we can get as many calls and maybe attack some of these Gmails that we have. You can also Gmail me, by the way, at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will send you a symbol when I have it. And then when a date comes up that it can be read, I will also alert you of that. And lastly, you can get in contact with the show by going to the chat room. Well, not contact, but your comments can be on the chat room. We'll go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on the where it says programs. Then you want to get the Produce Justice show. You click on that, and then at the very last end to the right side, I believe, is the button where you can push, and then the chat room becomes available for you to get in there. And there are some people in the chat room. Okay, now all the books and materials that are on this show can be gotten at producejustice.com. And Fred in Honolulu, I'm going to get to you after I get Mr. Fuller to speak about his book. Mr. Fuller, there are some that have just tuned into the program. There are some that don't know about the book. So talk about your book for a few months before we resume the phone calls.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And what is the book for? It's to help the individual victim of white supremacy to have a code of thought, speech, and action, something you can depend on that will always work. That's the way it's supposed to be when you do it or say it in solving what? A problem that you think that you may have. You have to decide what problem you may be having. In the code book, there are suggestions about how you, as an individual person, without asking anybody's permission or anything like that, can go about solving that problem and dealing with the system of white supremacy. It's segmented into 9 areas of activity: economics, which means basic time and energy. Economics is not just about money. That's the first thing people think about when they think of economics.
That's true.
Money is just a tool of economics. How you use your time and energy. Time and energy is the practical definition of economics. You're born with time and energy. That's economical right there. If you use your time and your energy in a constructive manner that works for you and not against you, that's basic economics. Babies, when they're born, immediately think of economics once they start thinking, meaning gaining something, like they will reach out for the nipple of the mother's breast when they're born, or a bottle that's put into their mouth. With food, that's basic economics, time and energy. That's what the baby has. The mind hasn't even kicked in earnest yet. But the baby reaches out for the basics, which will be nourishment of the time and energy that it already has. So that's an example. Now, the textbook for victims of white supremacy is like the baby being nourished, because that's where we got to start from. We start with, we are babies in the system of white supremacy. By we, I mean people who are victims of white supremacy. A lot of black people say, I'm not no victim of nobody. I go my own way and do what I want to. Nobody stops me from doing nothing. Well, the book is not for you. If you think you have a problem with racism, then the book is for you, not against you. Everything in it should work for you, not against you. I even have a section of quotations in the back, that stimulates your thought.
Yeah.
Just quotations that I wrote, jotting down on pieces of paper. I just threw that in there as a last-minute thing, because I wrote the book, the 2016 edition, and even the original edition, the 1984 edition. I wrote everything that I've ever written. I wrote it in a hurry and under conditions, not the best of conditions. So it's kind of sloppily written. Everything I've written, I say, could have been done better. So when the people who have the book or who get the book pick it up, keep that in mind. In particular, all the scholars and whatnot who will probably put the book down after the first 5 pages. People who really have command of the English language. They'll probably do that. But I say that the book is functional enough to stimulate some thinking and cause a person, because a lot of things are just suggestions, just hopefully simple, written simply enough for the person to say, well, I'm going to try doing this. And when you try it, it works. And some people have said that they have done that. Now, I tried this, so I was at work the other day, and something came up. And I thought about what I had read in your book, and I used it, and it worked. And that's why I started writing, because the things that I have written in my own book, I have tried it, and it worked. That's how I got in the book in the first place. Then I tried it again, doing and saying something that I did or something that I said, and it always worked. So I said, I'm going to stick with this. That's how I started writing the book in the first place. I would do things, and I said, I can't do that no more. That didn't work. I'm not going to say nothing like that again, ever, because it doesn't work. And then I started saying other things, and it worked. Then I'd do it again, and it worked, and it wound up in the book.
Yes, sir.
Why not stick with something that works? And that's all the code is about, in a capsule, in a nutshell. Doing and saying the things that work for you, not against you. Anything that works against you ain't got no business in the book. And that's what the book is for. If you consider yourself a victim of white supremacy, And I'm talking about 9 areas of activity. Anything in economics, I mean, what little bit there is in there. Anything in education, including the definition of education itself. So you always start with definitions. Sex, war, religion, politics. That's the biggest section in there. What is politics? I say politics is any interaction between people. Like if people ask you, here's an example, are you in politics? See, I've always been in politics since I interacted with my mother. That's political right there. I had a mother, so that's the first person I interacted with. That's political. And then ask a question. Is it? You can ask the person that you're talking to, is that political? The interaction that I had with my mother when I was born, or before I was born, because I was in her womb, that's political. There's a different way of looking at the same thing. All through the code, there's different ways of looking at the same thing. I sometimes explain the book that way. And getting things done that will work for you and not against you. Go to producejustice.com.
All right.
Producejustice.com.
Producejustice.com. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, let's go way out to Hawaii. Aloha to Fred. Fred, let me get you in here. Wait a minute. Okay, Fred, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Way early in the morning. What is it, 5:30, 6 in the morning out there? Go ahead, Fred.
Yes, sir. It is very early in the morning here. Yes, sir, Mr. Bobby. How you doing, Mr. Fuller? It's a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Fuller. First, I want to start off with a VGQ really quickly. I called in previously, maybe a few months ago, and I asked a question to Mr. Fuller about critiquing other victims of white supremacy. And he mentioned that it doesn't serve a constructive result. He mentioned earlier about children in the system of white supremacy and how white people are the illegitimate parents of black people or victims of white supremacy. Why is it that critiquing a child serves a constructive result in the system, but not other black people or victims of white supremacy? That is my question.
Oh, let's see. I really didn't get that.
Hey, repeat that again, Fred.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. I believe that one of the reasons why the smartest black people have not solved the problem of racism because most of us cannot receive criticism well as black people, no matter what the age. So if it serves a constructive result to raise a child and critique a child, why isn't it not constructive when critiquing a black person or a victim of white supremacy? That is my question.
I still don't understand the question, I don't think, but I'll try.
Okay.
Why is it that black people...
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me repeat. Okay, because you said numerous times that the white man or the white supremacists, not the white man, I'm sorry, the white supremacists are the illegitimate parents of black people in the system of white supremacy. We all know that it is very constructive to critique a child because you have to raise the child up in order to be...
Wait a minute, hold it right there. That's the part I'm not getting. Why is it what?
Why does it produce a constructive result in critiquing
wait, I want to get
child?
this first part, otherwise I'll lose the last part. Why
Yes, sir.
say it word for word, slowly.
Okay, yes, sir. Why does raising a child in the system of white supremacy... Why does raising a child... Yes. In the system of white supremacy produces... In the system of white supremacy. Is constructive. Raising a child in the system of white supremacy, why is that more constructive than critiquing a black person in the system of white supremacy?
Than critiquing a black person?
Yes, criticizing or critiquing, meaning you're watching the things that they do, and you are making a judgment or a opinion on the things that they do. That's what I mean when I say critique.
And you
or
say,
criticize.
why is raising a child more important, or what?
No, more constructive. More constructive.
More constructive? Than
yes.
critiquing a black person?
In the system of white supremacy, yes, sir.
I don't know, because raising a child, if you have a child, and people do produce offspring, that's constructive if you want a child. And I have been told that people are put here, part of the reason people are put here is to produce offspring. We have the mechanisms for producing offspring: a womb, a phallus, sperm. That's for producing people, more people, so you don't run out of people. So you do that, presumably, with constructive intent. Your intent should always be constructive. So you try to tell that person, which the offspring is going to be a person, the constructive things to do, and the non-constructive things, all the things not to do. Doing the things that should be done that produce constructive results, and don't do the things that don't produce constructive results. And now, which is more important than something else? Well, it depends on what you're talking about, whatever that something else is. But make everything that you do constructive. As long as it's constructive, it's all equal. It's not more constructive or less constructive. Does it need to be done at the time it needs doing? That's the question. Doing anything. Having offspring, not having offspring, is it going to produce a constructive result? That depends on what the person's circumstances are. Is it going to produce a constructive result? And try to make it constructive. Make a non-constructive situation into a constructive situation, if I understand the question. That's it. Keep it simple. Either it's going to be constructive or non-constructive, regardless of what it is. Does it produce a constructive result? Depends on what you're talking about, that you're doing. People do different things. Producing babies is one of them. Oh, is it? Okay, well, if you're going to be teaching that baby things, it's going to either be constructive or non-constructive, one or the other. So you always try to do the constructive thing about anything, not just when it comes to offspring, about anything. That's what counter-racist science, that's what compensatory science, that's what constructive logic is for.
Okay.
Find out the things to do that you should do, and don't do the things that you shouldn't do. Real simple. Not complicated. We use different words of saying it, but that's all it is. Is this constructive? Just ask yourself that.
Okay. Hey, Fred, in the background, there's some noise, Fred, in the background there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bobby. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now, that part of the question about black folks not liking to be criticized, could you explain that or ask that again? The criticism.
Well, okay, so part of what I'm trying to say is, at one point or another, I had asked a question, and Mr. Fuller, I asked a question about why isn't it constructive to criticize black people or other victims of white supremacy? And Mr. Fuller said that because it doesn't produce a constructive result. Now, but it does produce a constructive result when you raise a child and critique the child. You don't want the child to grow up and act crazy or do anything that's non-constructive. So what is the difference is what I'm asking. What is the difference in raising a child? Because you said, because he also stated in his book and also on the show that the white supremacists are the illegitimate parents of black people.
Okay.
So what I'm asking is, what is the difference?
Wait a minute, let me get this. The white supremacists are what?
You stated that the white supremacists are the illegitimate parents of black people.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking, what is the difference in raising and critiquing a child in the system of white supremacy and critiquing a black person in the system of white supremacy? Like, what is the difference? That's what I was asking.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Well, I think I tried to answer the question. The question seems kind of convoluted, but I said, just look at it like this, and don't let the words get in the way of what position somebody has. Just look at it and say, whatever the person is doing, including yourself, or including white people, does it produce a constructive result? Always look for the constructive result, regardless of how it starts out. And just ask that one question, first of all, to yourself. Is this constructive? And if it's not, you ask other people, particularly white people, if they are cause of the problem. If there is a problem, whatever that problem is, just ask that question. That's a part of the code, a super part of the code, a superior part of the code. Is this, sir, ma'am, is this thing that we are doing, or you are doing, or I'm doing, or the offspring is doing, my offspring, is it producing a constructive result? Yes or no? And if it's not, why? Constructive result. Everything is supposed to be about constructive results.
Yes, sir.
No matter how anybody looks at it or tries to explain it or anything like that, you can nod off and whatnot and wake up an hour later and you miss something about going on. You can ask anybody who has the answer. This thing that we're doing or talking about, or this thing that's happening, what's going to be the constructive result? This thing that you all are proposing be done, or something that was done last night at 12 o'clock. What was the constructive result, if any? And wait for the answer.
Wait for the answer. Okay.
Right. Don't interfere with the answer.
Fred Houghton, Hawaii, thank you so much for calling in. And I haven't recognized you before, but do not be a stranger. Appreciate your call very much. Okay, L.A., SWA, you are just about there. All right, SWA, go ahead.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Neely Jr.
You got to speak up, bro.
Mr. Here. Last week, you confirmed that we've been taught to worship white supremacists, white people, like their gods. What should black people, non-white people, do about that reality?
Unteach it. Just tell the truth. And you find the truth by doing what? Questions and answers. You just ask one. So the question would be, logically speaking, is a white person a god because they're white? And then you have another question. What is a god? Well, for one thing, a god has to be a creator. That's the qualification according to logic. You're not a god if you don't create. Now, what does creation mean? Making something out of nothing after having the nothing that the something will be in. You're not qualified to be a god unless you can do that. You make something, then you make something else and you make something else. You can make people, create people. Not reproduce, but create people. Out of what? Out of nothing. But you first have to be able to create the nothing that the people are going to be in which we now call people something. And you say you made something out of nothing. But the nothing had to come before the something. So it takes a real genius. Genius means the beginning, the very beginning. That's what you have to be, according to logic, to qualify for the title of God. You create. A God creates, not reproduces now. You have to make something. You have to be able to make something out of absolutely nothing. Inventors make something out of something. Whatever they invent, like a motor car or a washing machine or whatever. Say, I invented that. And he's telling the truth, he or she. But if he or she says, I made all of the materials that came before the washing machine, that went into making the washing machine, and I also made the nothing in which I would gather the materials, which I made too, that goes into the washing machine, which I put you into position as a person, because I made you. Yeah, I created you in order to make, for you to make the washing machine. But I made all the materials that you made the machine out of. In other words, it's the ultimate. Has anybody ever seen or anybody ever claimed to have made the nothing that came before the something?
Okay. Good question.
Not nobody that I know.
Okay. Thank you, Swall. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you so much. All righty, let's go to Estelle in the Mojave Desert. Estelle, I'm sorry. Estelle, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hello, Mr. Fuller. Calling to ask the question. Let me start with this. Since many non-white people have classified themselves as white, even when they do not look phenotypically white, should a black person consider them a racist suspect? I'm speaking about people who are classifying themselves as Mexican, Middle Eastern, and all of their documents all have that they're white, and they consider themselves white. Are they to be considered a racist suspect?
Well, this is in the code book. It depends on whether other white people or white people who you recognize as white say that they are white. See, I read a magazine called Holiday Magazine. I think that was the name of it, back in the 1960s. And they were saying some tribes, particularly the Watusi, it said in that magazine, if I recall correctly, if I recall the information correctly, that even though the Watusi tribes were African and black, they were really white, because they were basically Caucasoid. Watusi, they are really white people, even though their skin is black. Now, that was in a magazine. So it just comes down to who decides. So in the system of white supremacy, according to the code, a white person decides who's white and who's not. And that white person has to be not only a white person, but a white supremacist. because the white supremacists, whatever they say that has anything to do with black people's comings and goings, the non-white people, or the people who white supremacists say are non-white, whatever they say goes. That's going to be the law. Why? Because they're in the supreme position. That's why. Because they're smart enough to be there, and nobody else has figured out how to stop it. None of the non-white people, be they ever so smart, has any idea that's been proven of how to go about replacing what a white supremacist says about anything. That's what makes them supreme.
Yes, sir.
So a white person can say, yes, that person, and you say that person has black skin. No Watusi? How can they be white? Because I said so. And then they can punctuate it with the N-word, talking to you. And if you don't like it, what are you going to do? Is there anybody you can run to? That hasn't been proven either. You better run to another white person if you want an argument with a white person. You're going to have to run to another white person to settle that argument, because no black person has ever proven that they have the muscle to overrule a white person. That's what white supremacy means. And that's anywhere on the planet, right this minute. Now, for those who don't believe that, try it. Put it to a test. You're going to oppose a white person in anything, directly or indirectly. You better get a white person to back you up, because no black person can. No black person has that kind of muscle, not one.
Not one. Okay. Well, we got to leave it there because we are rapidly running out of time for this program dated January the 17th, 2023. Thank you, Estelle, from the Mojave Desert. Okay. Well, this is 2 weeks with this question, Mr. Fuller, about the smartest people in the world. Be curious to see or understand what might be on next week's agenda. 2 weeks. Even in the chat room, it was discussed. All righty. Anyway, we appreciate your questions and your calls, your comments, your Gmails, those that I had read. We hope to do better on the next time that we come together. So we're going to rapidly end the show. Mr. Fuller, do you have a closing comment that for us before we depart for this week?
The closing comment and the opening comment, maybe for next week's program and all the weeks after that, is because I think we've reached that point. What I started with today, the smartest white people, I also included black people, but for sure, the smartest white people, since everything is becoming real confusing now, let the smartest white people explain why they haven't solved the race problem. That's a simple question. Ma'am, sir, I don't care if it's a professor or a scientist or whatnot, I want the smartest white people. Everybody else should be quiet.
Okay.
The smartest white people. Everybody agrees that these are the smartest people on the planet. These 5 people or this committee of people, it might turn out to be just one person. The smartest of the smartest. Nobody has ever proven that they're smarter. And it might be just 12 people or 200 people. But the very smartest, I mean, got answers to everything. Why haven't you? I'm saying that directly to them now. The smartest of white people on planet Earth. Why haven't you solved the race problem?
Okay, got to leave it there. Got to
right.
leave it there. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. folks, we will try to do better the next time. But remember, books at producejustice.com. Mr. Fuller, thank you. Thank you, callers. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
I thank everybody.
ProduceJustice.com.